a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people.
That is the President of the United States floating the idea of deporting American citizens who are criminals that Trump believes to be really bad people to the notorious mega prison in El Salvador. Now, I'm going to tell you what the law actually says about that in a second. But first, how did this statement even come up? Well, because today President Trump was meeting with President Bukele of El Salvador. If you don't know him, he is the 43-year-old president who likes to be called the world's coolest dictator. Now, there is no denying that rampant gang violence in El Salvador has dramatically been reduced, all because of the strongman policies of Bukele and because of the CECOT mega prison that he built. But many question the methods that Bukele used to make that crime disappear in his country. And when it comes to that supermax CECOT prison itself, Human Rights Watch says there are cases of torture, inhumane conditions, and violence. Bukele himself says the prison is a black hole where his prisoners do not see the light of the sun ever. Once a prisoner is at CECOT, they have zero communication with the outside world. That means no family, no friends, and no lawyer. No contact. CECOT is where the Trump administration sent those migrants who they say were gang members and in the United States illegally last month. By the way, the American government is paying President Bukele $6 million a year to house about 300 or so of those migrants at CECOT. But today, President Trump suggested to Bukele while in the Oval Office that he should build more CECOT prisons so Trump could send more migrants and possibly American criminals who happen to be bad people too. Bukele, who is a very close ally of Trump, was absolutely on board.
And we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem and a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. Well, you have to imprison some. That's the way it works, right? You cannot just, free the criminals and think crime's going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime.
So, can Trump really send American citizens who are criminals to serve prison sentences at CECOT or to any prison outside the United States? Well, American citizens fall under the jurisdiction of the United States Constitution. And the United States Constitution and multiple federal and state laws are pretty clear about incarceration and punishment in this country. El Salvador and any other foreign country is not under the jurisdiction of the United States Constitution or United States law. So right there, that's a pretty big glaring problem. And here's the thing, even criminals who are convicted of the most heinous crimes in the United States, whether you like it or not, still have constitutional rights, like the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. The courts have interpreted that to require certain minimum standards when it comes to prison conditions. I think based on what we know about CECOT, that facility would not comply with the Eighth Amendment. There, of course, is also the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. It says no one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Those 11 words are so important. They appear twice in the Constitution. They're also found in the Fifth Amendment. That is the only command that appears twice in the Constitution. Due process means that no matter what crime you are alleged to have committed, you must be granted access to a process to defend yourself. In fact, just last week, the Supreme Court unanimously reaffirmed that even migrants who are not U.S. citizens must have due process before they can be deported, and the U.S. courts absolutely have jurisdiction over that due process and can absolutely review the Trump administration's actions. Of course, there are also a whole host of federal and state laws that govern incarceration and punishment in the United States. The Crimes and Criminal Procedures Code, which talks about the imprisonment of a convicted person, says at one point that they must be held in a facility within 500 driving miles of their primary residence. That was actually reaffirmed in the First Step Act of 2018, which was signed by President Trump himself. That law orders the Bureau of Prisons to house federal prisoners within 500 miles of their family as long as the facility is able to meet their level of security or medical needs. The point of that law was to ensure that the family members can visit their incarcerated loved ones. Obviously, CECOT is way farther than 500 driving miles away. Now, you may be thinking, but what about Guantanamo Bay? That's a foreign detention facility. Yes, it is. And yes, Americans have been held there. But that facility is also run by Americans. So they are under the jurisdiction of the Constitution, too. Look, we have seen the Trump administration testing the limits of presidential power and also testing the limits of the law repeatedly since he took office. So it is possible that they may try to put American citizens who are criminals in foreign prisons, but whether the courts will allow that to happen is a whole different story.